Hello viewers. Well, a couple of months back I caught up with Ben Collins, the Stig himself, to find out a bit about his work, what he'd been up to, but also his input into Project Cars 2. Of course, not long to go now, just over a month until release. We look forward to previewing it very soon, but I wanted to get his input on development, where it is going, and what we can look forward to. So this is what he had to say. Hello viewers, so now I'm joined by Ben Collins. Ben, well, thanks for meeting me today, and also, I suppose, to kick off with, tell me a bit about what's your role on Project Cars 2?
Well, since about 2011, I've been working as a physics and handling consultant, which sounds very, very serious, which it is. It's been basically bringing as much of my real-world experience to the guys developing the physics model, the tyre model, that basically is the heart and soul of our game. It makes all the functionality of the cars as real as possible. So we've got very dynamic braking, very responsive steering with feedback through the steering wheel if you use a wheel, or even get, making the gamepads work. So every aspect really to try and make the sim racing experience as close to reality as possible is where I get involved. Okay,
so you have bags of experience. I last saw you quite a few years ago now, and there was all that ruckus at Top Gear when you released your book.
Yep.
You're friends now with Clarkson & Co. You've been working with them since?
We seem to get on, yeah. It was all fine. It was all very noisy when I left, but I guess that was to be expected. And I've been pursued by the press for 8 years when I was in the job. I remember the Sunday Times did a review on I had size 10 feet because up until that point I'd done a good job keeping my name out of the papers, but in the end it came out, and it's time to leave and do something else. So we've gotten on since, and I did quite a fun film with them when they left and went Amazon. We did another film together, which was great. I actually hadn't seen some of them. I hadn't seen Jeremy since I left. So it's been a sort of 4 or 5 year gap, and it was like nothing had changed. So it was like a day had gone past.
It was great to see you guys have patched it up after that. Little, like I say, little ruckus at the time.
A minor tiff.
A minor tiff. What can I say? You've done other things since then. Tell us about some of the racing stuff, including the James Bond experience as well.
Yeah, I've loved every job I've had. I've been very lucky. I love racing. I raced cars for 20 years. Being the Stig for that time was a unique experience, and brilliant to get to learn how movies are made and films and TV and short and long. So I thought it'd be a good idea to try and get into stunt driving, and had this great opportunity to go and work on Quantum of Solace. That was my first Bond movie, doubling Bond and doing a car chase for 4 months. So the first one I did was in Lake Garda in Italy, going around that big lake, driving an Aston Martin, doing terrible things to it, and then Skyfall, and then a little bit on Spectre as well. So I've done those films, and others like Doctor Strange. I've worked on Fast and Furious as well, doubling Vin Diesel, getting my bald cap on. So it's been really varied, and I love doing it. It's great. It's fantastic camaraderie and teamwork with the films, and it's different to the racing because you have a team behind you, but once you're out in that pit lane and the green light comes on, you're really in a battle on your own against everyone around you. With the stunt crews, you're very much working all together. Quite a risky environment, but you're all collaborating to make sure it looks great, and everyone comes out the other side in one piece.
That's a fascinating area, sort of stunt driver stuff that we don't always see. I suppose you see the glamorous side of working with the stars. I mean, I take it you get to meet them and talk to them about certain aspects. I mean, people must be constantly impressed with your skills, though, when you're doing that kind of thing.
Well, you hope so.
It's a high level, high standard.
If they're not impressed on your last day, you don't get hired the next time. So you've got to make sure you live up to whatever reputation you try to build. I love it. It's great. With films, if I'm lucky, I get to really lean on every ounce of experience that I've got. And you get to, particularly the big productions, they take over a whole city or something. Get to drive cars. I remember drifting one through Piccadilly Circus. The whole place, central London, was closed off. It's an incredible honour to have that kind of access. And meet some really cool, dangerous people. Absolutely. So let's talk a bit about racing. Are you doing any racing series? What have you been working on sort of the last couple of years? My racing career has gone online, for better or worse, and I very much miss doing Le Mans. And so the last time I went was 2015. Had a great run with an independent Ferrari team. And we got fastest lap in our category, which was great, and we led races that year. But kind of momentum on that is very difficult. With the sponsorship is what drives it, unless you're a factory driver, and I wasn't in that position at that time. But I've got to race everything from LMP1, LMP2, GT, NASCAR, all of that. So I'm deploying that with Project Cars 2, and we've now got every type of racing, from rallycross to oval, It's really incredible, and in such a real way. We were talking earlier about the weather. I love a bit of rain on the racetrack. It really livens things up, and I think people will really be blown away with how, it's just lifelike. What you see is what you get. If you see a big puddle, when you hit it, you can expect to get aquaplane, and you come around the next time, you might even see your own tyre tracks through it and find it easier. It is that life-like. So
really detailed.
That
cool. Was the next question, really. I guess is Project Cars 2 is coming. Fundamentally, there's a lot of changes to the handling. If you were to, what are the key points that you've seen that's been improved? I mean, for example, I was racing it earlier and I was noticing the car was a little bit looser to the rear now, a lot more movement. I was able to save the car, put in some opposite lock and various different things that in terms of feeling of grip and stuff like that. But from your perspective, you obviously got far more detail, these different cars. What have you found fundamentally to be the best sort of main improvements?
Yeah, the biggest nuance is what you've described, which is on the limit, how sensitive the car responds. You go into a corner too quickly, usually you feel the steering isn't as effective, you understeer, the tyres are scrubbing a bit, and you can nip that in the bud quite quickly with a dab of the brake or a correction with the steering, and then start to loosen up the rear end, start floating in and feel the car rotating. We can flip in between those two modes very quickly. The sim has got enough compliance in it to let you really drive the car intuitively the way you would a real car, and it's a dichotomy with a lot of sim racers are used to cars that if you go over the limit you spin off and hit the wall. If that was the case, I'd have been killed a long time ago on the track. Real life, there is more nuance to it. You'll get away with more. You may be slower, but you won't always clatter the wall and spin out. So we've got that. I think it's much more refined. You can drive the car on a throttle, you can hustle through the corner, and I think that you get a lot more feedback. So for me, that's a big step change, and we had to get that right because there's drifting in this game. You've got to be able to throw the car sideways and have grip when the car is sliding, some of the silliest things have taken us months of debate on the forum and in meetings and in the development sessions to get what seemed to be very simple things to work. So I think we're ahead of the game on that.
Is there any particular classes so far that you've particularly enjoyed and you've played this and thought? You mentioned Le Mans. I mean, we've got multi-class racing, everything else now. Is there anything that you've raced that you say, ice racing could be, or anything?
For me, the best experience I've ever had, I've driven a Formula 1 car, but the best was the LMP1, or LMP 900 it was called, the 2001 car. It was a Lola with a V10 Formula 1 engine, 850 horsepower, more downforce than an F1 car. That era of Le Mans sports car was the most wicked and entertaining fun you can have with your clothes on, really. And we're starting to look at these older Le Mans cars. I'm pushing like mad to get those cars in because we've got some amazing, powerful machines. We're in there playing with an Indy car. We've got the LMP1 cars now, but those were raw. Unbelievably, you could spin the wheels in third gear. In the rain, you'd be spinning your wheels in fifth gear. Really, really powerful and great fun. And so there's those. I'm also always lobbying for really cool tracks. We've got so many amazing tracks that really are a sport for choice. And the Nordschleife is done absolutely spot on. A giant track, and the detail is wonderful. But love a street track, so I'd love to see Macau, my favourite street track, and that of many other racing drivers.
That's a great and challenging circuit, Macau, and for up-and-coming drivers as well. A lot of them have shown off what they're capable of there. You mentioned the old Le Mans cars. One I've always liked is the Mazda 787B, just because I like the sound, but the profile of it for me, it's classic Le Mans. So I guess just a question on just some of the cars you've driven in real life. What would you say is, if you've driven so many types of cars, but do you have a couple of favourites that you've driven that speak to you and say these are amazing?
Yeah, often some of the most difficult to drive, or challenging anyway. So a Porsche Carrera GT as a road car, closest thing to a racing car for the road. It would again a V10 engine. It's an incredible snap. You touch the throttle, it would be up to 10,000 revs like within a millisecond.
Sounds terrifying.
Super responsive, yeah. And your feet were kind of on this aluminium deck, if I remember rightly. And when you hit a bump, your feet would kind of move, and you had to discipline yourself because if you hit a bump and touch the throttle, you'd spin off. As I discovered when I was working on the show. But it was one of those things. It was once you adapted to what it wanted, it was like a surgical instrument, and you could put it anywhere. And so I really loved that. And I think an easier car to drive, one of the modern classics, is a Ferrari 458. Absolutely wonderful, very forgiving machine. and to some of the less forgiving, like the Koenigsegg CCX that spat me off the track, was again, very challenging.
And your advice was the rear wing.
The rear wing, put some downforce on it.
Yeah, put some downforce.
Well, they had got the land speed record for production cars by stripping all the downforce off it and sending it down a straight like a rocket, which was wonderful for straight lines, but for curves, you need it to be a bit more pinned down. And Koenigsegg have done that in spades.
I love the way they listened to you. I mean, I remember at the time, Top Gear seemed relatively proud of that. Stig said this, and next minute they...
Yeah, no pressure. I can go 3 seconds quicker with that wing on, and the producers, of course, said, right, well, we've got the wing, so do what you said you'd do, or you're fired. No, they didn't quite say that, but words to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you did it anyway. You did the business with it, and it was much much quicker. So, obviously, Project Cars. There's a lot that we can't talk about that's in the game at the moment. There's tons of new cars that are going to be in there, and we'll look more at that later. But I guess two things really. So far, your favourite car track combination, and the other thing is, what are you going to be up to next? What's next for Ben Collins in the world of everything?
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the best tracks in the world, still for me, is Alton Park up in Cheshire. Just lots of fond memories there from racing it in Formula 3, and I suppose a car that's similar to that in our sim is the Formula B, as well as we got the LMP1 cars. So I rattle those around there, probably in ways that you shouldn't. But it's a very fast car on a very twisty track with lots of camber change. And because all the bumps are in the game, you get that rhythm of the track, and it's incredibly. The place fits like a glove, and that's the one where the Oculus really you're completely immersed. You put the headset on and you're there. So I love that. And next up for me, well, we got to obviously we'll put the finishing touches to Project Cars 2. Which is going to keep me busy. I'm working on a new movie for the next month and a half, doing some stunts in that. And then off to America, hopefully do some TV out there, so that'll keep me busy. Brilliant. Well, listen, Ben, it certainly sounds like action. I look forward to seeing what you've got next, and thank you very much for your time. Look forward to seeing the launch of Project Cars 2. Bring it on. Thank you. It's always good to catch up with Ben. I do enjoy meeting him. Obviously, I've met him before, but it's great to hear his input and with actual experience in the cars. There's no armchair stuff there. He knows what he's talking about, and a lot of improvements have been made. We're going to look at that in the preview coming soon. We've also got an interview coming with Nick Hamilton as well, which was recorded at the same event. Again, this was based on an earlier version of the game, the sort of stuff we're talking about. But that's it from me for now. And as I say, I'll be working on that Project Cars 2 content, and there'll be more from me very soon.